Welcome to the Future Is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Future is Borderless, where we dive deep into the stories behind business leaders. We want to talk about the wins, the losses, and the lessons that come from that journey. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Laura Drury, who is the CEO of TAB Focused Directions. TAB, which is short for the Alternative Board, brings business leaders together from non-competing industries and allows them to learn in small group settings, similar to a board of directors. And her work sits at the intersection of leadership, learning, and community. And today we're going beyond the surface to explore the real story behind her venture. So Laura, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this should be fun. Yeah, I think we'll have a good conversation. If I look back on my own professional journey, I think my greatest source of both personal and professional development has come in this sort of peer-to-peer format. So I'm excited to talk about this, and I'd love to just maybe start there and just ask, like, what was the spark or that moment that led you to start a peer-to-peer learning business?
You know, I think my husband and I have had so many conversations over the years about the desire to go into business together, but we hadn't found that thing that, both ignited both of us that we wanted to go do until we were talking to some friends who retired from doing what we're doing now, which is really working with business owners and bringing them into that peer environment to help them learn and grow and to stay on track and continue that momentum that really makes businesses sustainable and growing. And the thing about business owners that's so exciting is that they're kind of people that are self-motivated. They're on the edge of their learning. They're always looking for, what is the next thing for me to be doing. They're pretty forward thinking, generally speaking, and they have that mindset where they're free to do what they want to. They can make their own decisions. They're not feeling hemmed in by anything or anyone.
Yeah. You said that you knew the people that operated this business before you took over.
Yeah.
What was it about the opportunity that really spoke to you, though? And I guess more specifically, what did you do previously that you felt really aligned to you getting into this business?
So my prior career was in telecom software, totally different kind of environment, but I had the opportunity to work for a really small company in that space, which is unusual. And not only that, they were also a public company. So they had some unique and strange forces upon them in terms of what they needed to do in order to be sustainably successful and growing. And I fell in love with the business of doing business, of the juggling act that it takes to create a successful business, to really hit on those things and the resources and the timing and the consistency of doing all these different things that it takes. And it's a puzzle that's challenging and ever changing. So it's nothing you can get bored with. And from the biggest perspective of our economies, whether we're looking locally or nationally or internationally, is all about entrepreneurship and individual people who are accessing new ideas and moving into new areas and providing jobs and all this sort of thing. And if we could be part of supporting that feels like something significant.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for some of the listeners here that may be not as familiar with the peer-to-peer learning concept, can you share tactically, what does that experience look like? Like, what are people coming to you for, and what are you curating alongside them, and what really makes it work?
Good question. So there's a lot of different parts to that. The central piece pieces probably are getting in a peer group. So having business owners from different industries get together on a regular kind of cadence where they have real conversations about what's working and what's not working, and how to close the gap between, those business best ideas, those best practices, and what's real and what works in their company, in the environment they're in right now. So those conversations are pivotal. We back that up with coaching for the entrepreneur, where we're working on, okay, here's what you learned in your board meeting, in your peer environment. How are you going to apply that? And how are you applying that? And what's going on with that whole application process? And then how are you preparing your next topic so that you can bring something to that group so you can get the most out of it, right? Because, we tend to sometimes talk in generalities with people, and it doesn't really help us. We have to give them the specifics, right? And then people can go, oh, yeah, I had a situation like that, and here's what I did, and here's what worked, and here's what didn't. And then once they have that, they've thrown it against that sounding board, they can make a really good informed decision and that they feel really confident about. In contrast to knowing you have a problem and just sort of pushing it to the side and pushing it to the side and not making any kind of decision, which is a decision, right? And we all know there's really big consequences to that, but being really clear about what's the right thing to do and the best choices, and then actually acting on that and following through on that makes a huge difference. And so what you can start to see is that the momentum that's required to do the growing that they want to do starts to happen because they continue to line that up. Is this what I'm doing now getting me closer to where I want to go, or is it taking me farther away? And kind of cutting out a lot of the noise that can get in the way. And then kind of the second part of it is, so that's working with the leader themselves. Second part is backing that up with building a leadership team in their organization that's really functional. So many of them all operating in silos, and that CEO or that business owner's in the middle of every decision, and there's just a lot of dysfunction going on there that doesn't help them be that visionary that they need to be to lead the company to the next thing, and what's happening around them, and what's the next thing for the company to be doing. And you lose all that vision when you're looking down at what's happening in your company. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of what we do and why it makes sense, why it works.
Yeah, I think my experience, because I'm in a very similar group. Like it's non-competitive industries that we meet once a month, basically, to talk about what I always refer to the top 5 and the bottom 5%. It's like we want to learn from what's really going well, but sometimes even more importantly, to learn from the mistakes. And the thing I love about it is because we're in non-competitive industries, we can share just about anything. I know what softwares they use. Most of them, I know exactly what their P&L looks like. I understand some of the challenges. And it's the one time that I see CEOs get together and they instead of feeling a little bit lonely, they actually get the chance to share that they don't really know exactly what they're doing, and that we all struggle with imposter syndrome. So it's a really great place for people to be able to let their guard down and just learn from each other.
Yeah. And it's so amazing to see that transformation take place where, we all doubt our own leadership and our own expertise in business and our own, somebody else is doing it better and faster and all those things. And it's rampant, right? But we get in this group and we realize, oh, the same story is going on for them and the same story is going on for them. And even more sometimes than our own thing that we bring that's not working or is working, or we're trying to make a decision about something, it's sometimes other people's. Because then we go, oh yeah, I know something about that. And that whole process of having to, of just being able to give your insight and your input and your wisdom about something that you don't have to do anything about is so amazing, because it's freeing, because you can just do it. But on the other hand, you realize, yes, I do know something about this. I have been living it and breathing it and working through it and all of these things. And so that again adds to that confidence. And when we have confidence, real confidence, not the fake confidence, it makes a huge difference in our ability to take risks, in our ability to inspire our teams, all these sorts of things that make such a difference in business. And when we can kind of all come together and go the same direction at the same time, powerful, right?
Yeah.
And so I think those kinds of forums where we get together with, especially with other industries, because industries are like people, they tend to solve problems in a similar ways. But when we are exposed to other industries, like, oh, I didn't never looked at it that way. And I think that can be really valuable to that diversity of thought.
Yeah. Who's your ideal customer? I mean, is it typically the business owner or is it executives? How do you think about that?
I think about the primarily and always first is the business owner themselves,
Yeah.
because that's where the vision is. And that's where it starts, and that's where it kind of needs to be rediscovered many times because it gets buried under, you know, the problems of the day and the demands of business environment. And so when that is really, really crystal clear, it's the foundation you build everything on. And so we always start there. And then we go wherever is the best place, what the business really needs in terms of, how do how do you assess where you're at, but then what is the plan to get from where you are to where you want to go? And a lot of times that where you want to go is aspirational. So it's going to continue to change and evolve, right? And so your plan needs to continue to change and evolve and your response to what's happening around you. So I think that's a fascinating process, but for me, that's where I always start.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Um, so along the lines of peer-to-peer learning, I'd love to maybe shift to your story. So
Mhm.
you you took over this business that was already in existence. So
Mhm.
arguably there's customers, there's employees, there's culture. I'd love to understand what was the hardest part about taking over a business that had already existed, and what did you do to sort of combat that?
Um, you know, I was a new business owner, brand spanking new, and had never, no one in my family's ever owned a business. I've never been around business owners, but my husband has. He's
Yeah,
the entrepreneur and he has had a series of businesses. And so I have been sort of vicariously learning from him a little bit just because I was around. Um, and again, I told you I fell in love with the business, just business, the whole experience and challenge of it. And so there was a lot of sort of drinking from the fire hose experiences for me of learning the cadence, understanding, money and cash flow and, um, how when you make a decision, the impact on those things and all that kind of stuff, just the rhythm of it even. And, it's one thing to know it intellectually, to be participating as an employee with it, really different when you're the one that's like the buck stops here, right?
yep,
And so that was part of it. Sales was a big part of it. Really learning and embracing sales from a totally different perspective, never having actually held a sales job myself.
yeah,
And then operations, which is kind of my sweet spot. It's like, well, how do you create operations that are truly efficient and effective and supportive of both the team and the clients, because that's the primary deal. So it's a lot of learning, a lot of learning. Now, for me, I didn't go right directly into supporting clients because the people that we bought the business from continued to support the clients that they had. So
oh, good.
it was more of a sales because we had zero clients, a running business, cash flow, mostly coming in and going out. But sort of starting from scratch from the perspective of we didn't have any clients of our own yet. So
Yeah,
that was a unique experience from some, but you know, it really worked. So, but it took a
yeah.
while.
Well, what do you think was the key? I mean, because as I understand it, you built a very successful business out there. Um, and what do you think was, sort of the key contributor to your success in doing
Tenacity, first of all,
that? Good.
never losing hope, those sort of thing. That people talk about. People try and try and try and try and then give up right before it starts working. And it does take that. It does take that. Every business owner knows. You just have to knows it holds bar. You're all in, and that's the way that it works, right?
Yeah.
But I think also if I had done this earlier, I probably would not be comfortable in my own skin as I am now, enough to not try to be something that I'm not. That there's that temptation when you're trying to sell your services or sell yourself, whatever you want to call it, to be what you think they want instead of to be yourself. And I think that is a major disconnect, and it doesn't resonate with people, right? It's like, it does, they're like, I think I'll go do something else, and some will, even if you're doing that, but I think that's not where success is, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I've had the experience and the ups and downs of, having a career and all that stuff, that I was able to just continue on and continue um, sharing from my heart and from my knowledge and what I believe about how to do business well. It's like, and then people would go, oh yeah, I get what you're saying. And then they would say yes. Right. So,
Yeah. That's awesome. I love hearing about how people build their businesses because it's so different depending on the industry and the characters behind it. So,
uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. It's
okay.
a real exercise in believing in yourself. Right.
Yeah, well, and I think all of us struggle with a little imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And so along those lines, I guess. So you talked about confidence earlier, and I think confidence is something that we often feel but can easily be lost, right? So
Oh
in
yeah.
those moments when you're feeling some self-doubt, like what are the rituals or who are the mentors or what are the philosophies that sort of help you get through those things?
Well, one is, I'm in business with my spouse, so I can always go to him and say, I've had enough no's in the recent past that I'm feeling doubtful,
Yeah,
and, help me see this differently. But I also have, my own coach, because I just believe that's the way to do business, right?
yeah,
And so, separate from my spouse, which, is somewhat, um, biased, right? I can go to somebody else and say, okay, here's how I'm feeling about it. I'm doubting this is the right thing to do, or I think I need to go in another direction, but I'm not clear yet. And I can work that stuff out. I also have my own peer group that I go to. So I throw stuff their way in terms of, here's the dynamics, here's what I'm seeing. How do I do the right thing, the next thing, or where's the hole in my plan here?
yeah,
And so those are really important things. And taking a step back from it is always critical, right? Take a break, go on a walk, or take a day off, force yourself not to work, right? Those sort of things that, we all need a little distance, right? To see things clearly. So I think the support systems are just absolutely key. And then, sometimes it's just a really good book. There's a million books out there, a lot of them, but there's a few, and I keep finding more, right? That are like, these really inspire me. These remind me of why I'm doing this. I go back and I read my vision, right? That always inspires me every single time.
mhm.
So those are a lot of the things I do.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds like similarly you have a learner's mindset. I love reading. I'm an insatiable learner, and what I love about it is I can read something, and even if I disagree, there's generally something I can pull from it into
Yeah,
my own context and put to use in my personal or professional world. So I
yeah,
think just staying on top of how things are evolving, what new practices are considered best practices,
yeah.
only helps us. You said something a second ago about coaches, and I've had a similar belief. I've always had a business coach.
Mhm.
What advice would you give a listener who's thinking about it? Like, what should they be? What are some of the filters or considerations when choosing the right coach?
Um, I think there are a few. One is, choose somebody that you resonate with. I mean, that you either appreciate what they have to say, or there's something about them that's you get that internal, yeah, I can really understand what they're saying, or I like what they're saying, or they're supportive. Somehow it like there's a resonance there, and we all can recognize that. Like, there's people you have like, not sure about that one, because we're all different. We connect with people differently. So I think you have to have that sort of thing, but not somebody that you want to be best friends with either, because they have to have that healthy separation, right?
Yeah.
So they can give you really good perspective and ask really good questions, and challenge you. And so I think you have to be ready. I think you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to be questioned, and willing to be intimate, really. And what I mean about that, be vulnerable about, I'm not feeling sure about this, or I'm feeling like a fake, or whatever's really going on, because that's when they can really help you. Um, so somebody that you can trust, that you like, somebody that you respect, and then, but only do it if you're ready to do the work, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm a firm believer that, being a truly good business owner, leader, entrepreneur, any of those kind of roles means it's a practice. You never get there. There is no there to get. It's a constant learning progress thing. So you have to have the people in the support system built around you. And that is not the spouse. They're tired of hearing the all that stuff, and they can't really help that much. But somebody who's a really good coach and confidant is priceless, right? And it keeps you in the practice so that you're not just stuck and sitting on your laurels, and then you go, "Ooh, I shouldn't have done that." You gotta keep, it's like, how do you push the edge? You got somebody there with you going, "Oh, did you know that's the edge? It's not, you don't need to be back there. You need to be up here." you
That's right.
know, and somebody that's willing to do that with you and for you.
Yeah. I love that you said that you're ready to do the work, because I think a lot of people think about hiring a coach as someone's going to give you all the answers, and not the case, right? So I always think about the people always use the example, Tiger Woods had a golf coach even when he was at his very, very best.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. I think the coach is there to sort of help us see our blind spots. But we have this mantra in our business. We say we're a gym, not a spa, which means that you got to be willing to do the work. You're not there to be served. And
Yeah.
that
And
is,
you're gonna sweat.
you're going to sweat along the way. That's exactly right. But that's where the growth occurs. So
Exactly. And that willing, it's come up several times for me recently, the willingness to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
yeah, that's right. I love
Like
it.
that. That's when I know I'm doing a good job. It's like, oh, this does not feel comfortable at all.
Agreed.
And,
Agreed.
that's what it's about, continuing to do that and continuing to challenge my own perspective about how things are. That's when I have the insights that lead me to the next step.
Yeah. Speaking about getting uncomfortable, I'm just curious. I mean, since you work with so many business leaders, what are the topics that are making people uncomfortable today? What are the things that are, sort of top of mind for the entrepreneurs that you work with right now?
Clearly, the thing that's making people most uncomfortable right now is the lack of clarity, the lack of being confident. It's like we tell ourselves stories all the time about things are always going to be this way or that way, and they're not, right? It's just that we tell ourselves that, and a lot of times it's true. And right now, the level of turbulence that everyone's dealing with is really off the scales. And it's not just about tariffs. It's not just about, changes in the government. It's not just about changes in the way that we're thinking. There seems to be across the board turbulence in all areas, whether they seem connected or not. And I must say, over the last 6 months or so, we've had more sort of ad hoc calls from our clients. Hey, I really need your help. Can we talk for a half an hour? Yep, we can. And because a crisis is happening, or they're just really up against something that they just cannot, they need to talk it through, right? And it's amazing that we've never had this level of that going on. And it's all different things, truly,
Yeah.
all different things. And so it's an interesting time. It's like everything's getting shaken up.
Yep.
And I don't
Yeah.
think that's necessarily bad, but we have to figure out what it is we want to create. And it's in our face way more than I think it has ever been.
Yeah, I think back on the last 5 years, it's been the most dynamic 5 years in my 25 as a business owner, right?
Yeah,
If I think about it, we had the pandemic, which resulted in a talent scarcity issue, an inflation issue. Then there was the adoption, like the mass adoption of remote work, global talent, now AI, and now you've got economic turbulence. I mean, just in the last 5 years, the amount of, I call it punches, but reasons to be adaptable have
yeah.
been just constant for
Mhm.
business leaders. So
Yeah,
I think
that
it's going to be,
uncertainty is just is like, whoa.
yeah. Well, and this is why I think, services like you provide, where you're providing people an opportunity to maybe gain a little bit of understanding and empathy, but also learning from how else other people are dealing with these things makes a lot of difference.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because what happens is when things feel this turbulent and uncertain, it's like we all build a mental model about the future. What is it going to look like? How is it going to be? And when this level of craziness happens in our lives, then the picture of what we thought the future was disappears, right? And most people will not make decisions when that happens, the freeze. So the freeze response happens, and we're not making decisions, which is a decision, and that causes this sort of hesitation in the marketplace and hesitation in our results as a business. And so it's a cascade and it's all interconnected. And really what needs to happen is we go, okay, let's build a new future. Let's talk about what it could look like, and figure out, for even if it's for today, right? And we can figure it out tomorrow again, but to establish that future and then continue to make decisions, because that's what keeps us moving forward. That was what keeps us growing and trying things out and doing more experimentation. What if we did this? And looking at how's the market reacting? It's reacting to uncertainty. So then how do we bring certainty? What do we bring certainty about? Because that's going to be like a lightning rod to people, like, okay, there's certainty about something. Great. Let's jump on that. And
yeah.
it's like, there's so many different ways to provide that, whether it's our expertise or some kind of guarantee or something that we can start saying, here's some certainty for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, I guess, look, we're coming close to the end of our time. I'd love to ask about your personal vision for the business. If you look over the next 3 to 5 years, what is it that you hope to be able to look back on and say, hey, we accomplished this? And how do you define that success?
I think for us, it's, the biggest pull for us is creating freedom in business. And what does that mean, right? Well, that means that the leaders, the CEOs, the business owners are not feeling drained and strained and weighted down by their businesses. They're feeling like, okay, I have this business, I have choices I can make. I am, leading this organization. I'm making decisions. I'm seeing what's happening in the future. I'm responding to that, and they have that feeling of freedom. A lot of times I meet them and they don't, right?
Yeah.
But it also is the leaders inside the organization. So how are they being doing their jobs, and what's the environment in which they're having that experience, and what's their autonomy like, and are they feeling like empowered to actually do the right things instead of micromanaged and controlled, because that's another response to uncertainty, right? Okay, we got to control everything. you know
Totally.
and so giving those leaders the confidence and walking that down the organization creates freedom in every level of the organization. And then between organizations, it's like, well, how are we exploring collaboration with other companies, even people who are perceived competitors? What does that look like? And how does that move us forward?
Yeah.
How does that help us get new ideas and serve the market better? So
Yeah.
for us, it's freedom. Next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be, probably 50% bigger. We're going to serve more clients and give them more options and more opportunities to do what they want and to create what they want. Um, so
I love it. I love it. I think freedom is a beautiful ambition because so many business leaders don't feel free. They actually feel bound by their businesses. And if you can accomplish that for many entrepreneurs, I think that is a really awesome outcome.
Because that's why they started in the first place, right? There was always this dream to be free from something, right?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
if they've now in the, in a worse place, that's not good. So we need to go back to that freedom. What does that create? And how do we get there? And so there's so many great tools to do that.
Yeah, the idea to buy a business or start a business to create the life you want, right? And what ends up happening is often the business is driving what we get from our life versus the opposite. And I think that's a great place to be. Well, this has been I think a really rich conversation. I think the insights, I appreciate your honesty, and I think the wisdom has been hard earned, and anyone can learn from that. So, as a reminder for our listeners, we've been talking to Laura Drury, who is the CEO of Tab Focus Directions. Laura, where can people go to learn more about the work that you're doing today?
We have a website, www.focuseddirections.com, 2 Ds and S at the end. There is the best place probably. And of course, reach out to me directly.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that link is in our show notes for anyone that wants to find you later. But thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you for having me. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was fun. And for our listeners, I hope that this episode reminded you that tough moments are where the real growth happens. And if you like the content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we'll look to see you again on the next episode of The Future is Borderless. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.